Bol Gaur Hari Bol. Srila Gurudev ki. So Vaishnavas have descended from higher level abodes into new Braj here. So much activity going on. Actually, why don't you lift up the camera and show? We can do a little panning of it and show the devotees stringing the garlands. We're going to give you a little view, those who are listening in on Facebook, in our beautiful temple room here in New Braj, with Sri Sri Radha Govinda Gauranga Mahaprabhu Nitai Gauranga, Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Sudarshan Chakra Jiyu, and Sri Nitai Gauranga and Sri Nrsimha Bhagavan, Srila Prabhupada's Murti. No, maybe you're not done. You can also go around and show all that activity going on. Now he's going to take the camera to the kitchen area where all the ladies are frantically.
I can try.
I'm not going to film?
Don't worry about that. Just make them and then
Everyone's absorbed in serving their lordships and our Guru Parampara. So, today in the afternoon time, we had a Zoom broadcast that was organized by the devotees in London, England, for 55 non-stop hours. I was looking at the schedule online. So that will go on until the 12th. I'm forgetting the time in London time, maybe like 8 p.m. or something like that. It will go on till that time. And we had one time slot where I spoke myself. They were asking me to do that for the last couple of weeks, for half an hour. And I spoke about how I first met Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, on the evening, the very evening when Srila Prabhupada, my Guru Maharaj, departed from this world in Sri Vrindavan, India, in 1977, November 14th. And that was the first time that I met our Gurudev. But it took some years after that for me to meet him again and then personally meet him, which happened 11 years later in 1988, when I came to visit him in Mathura, in Vrindavan, and to deliver a donation from our Pran Kishore Prabhu, who was helping Srila Gurudev to build his Sri Rup Sanatan Gaudiya Math temple in Seva Kunj, Vrindavan. It was January of 1988, and just after that, then I went to Navadvip Dham. I was only with Srila Narayan Maharaj for 3 days, and then I went over to Navadvip and spent, I think, about 10 days there. I only had 2 weeks in India. And that was my final darshan with Srila Sridhar Maharaj, because later in August, that same year, 1988, then he performed his final pastimes. And in those years following, I became very much intent. From 1988, when I met Srila Gurudev, for the next 6 years, I became very intent on coming closer to him, developing my relationship with him. And for me, I didn't have a chance to explain this in what I spoke this afternoon. But because I had already in my life 2 of the top most exalted personalities on the planet. Mahabhagavad Vaishnava, Srila Gurudev, Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, right? And also the whole story of how I came to Srila Sridhar Maharaj after the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada, and the years of my association with him is a whole nother chapter. And so the thing that I'm trying to express is that after having one guru who was the absolute topmost personality one can imagine, and my life and soul, there wasn't in my mind and in my heart that I would have a connection with another great Vaishnava in the same way that I had with Srila Prabhupada. Of course, I knew the philosophy that there's Diksha Guru, there's Siksha Guru, Pradarshak Guru, and so forth. I knew that. But at the same time, to actually directly experience within your heart that relationship, that mood of guru and disciple is a whole nother thing. So that's a whole story. I'm not going to be telling that story right now about my meeting with Srila Sridhar Maharaj and how I came in connection with him, but I'm just saying that prior to my personal meeting with Srila Narayan Maharaj, I already had 18 years of association with Srila Prabhupada for 7 years, and then there was a gap till 1979 when I first met Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and then from 79 until 88, that's another, 9 years, right? Yeah. So I was under the guidance of these personalities throughout that time, but Srila Narayan Maharaj, I always felt that I need to have a relationship with him. And when I met Pran Kishore here in California in the year that I returned back from England, that was in 1986, and his path had also gone the same as my path, that he was also forced out of ISKCON because of Srila Sridhar Maharaj wanting to have his association, right? And from almost the same time, around 83, 84. But the difference was that he had also heard a kirtan recording, a number of kirtan recordings of Srila Narayan Maharaj that was being played regularly in Philadelphia, where he was the head pujari on the altar every morning. There was some other devotee that was bringing onto the altar a tape recorder and playing these kirtans, which were going all around in ISKCON after Prabhupada left, of Srila Narayan Maharaj's singing and kirtan. So when he heard the voice of Srila Narayan Maharaj, he was also quite attracted, and he said, "Who is that person?" And he came to learn that there is this great Vaishnava, very close to our Srila Prabhupada, and that he was present and he performed the samadhi of our Srila Prabhupada. He learned a few things about him. So he made it his objective that when he would go to India, sometime around 1981, because he was head pujari in ISKCON, the pujaris used to fly to India and buy all kinds of deity paraphernalia for worshipping the deities. Can we just slide this window shut here?
Is it open?
Yeah, I opened it, but it's too much of a cross breeze for me. That one is okay. That one, we'll leave one open. Yes. So he actually went to India in 1981, and he inquired from the devotees there at the ISKCON temple, does anyone know Narayan Maharaj, where I can... And then there was one Prabhupada disciple who was like a Gurukula teacher. His name was Katha. And he he had been going regularly to Mathura to attend some of the Katha of Srila Narayan Maharaj, who was speaking in Hindi, because he was also learning Hindi. So he would go there. And so when Preraka was his name at that time, Pran Kishore, he said, oh, I want to meet him. So then he said, you know, I can arrange, if you like, you can organize a feast, and we will invite him to come. And he'll come from Mathura with his brahmacharis, and that way you can meet him. So this is what they did in the guest house building behind the Krishna Balaram Mandir. They organized a lunch, prasadam, some kind of feast, and Srila Narayan Maharaj came. That's how Pran Kishore met him the first time. Then he started going to Mathura also. But this began his relationship already in 1981. And this is before he met Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. So for him, it happened in like the opposite way. That he met Srila Narayan Maharaj first. And he was always going and seeing him and serving. And then in around 1985, when he went there, then Srila Narayan Maharaj told him at that time, he said, I have one project that I want to do. This old dilapidated temple in Seva Kunj Vrindavan. It was like 200-year-old structure. It's all broken down, and I want to renovate it and rebuild. Make a nice new temple there. So if you like, you can help me. But he had also met Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He went to India in 83, I think, 84, and met Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And he was already out of ISKCON. This time, if I remember correctly, he can correct sometime the actual dates. So I had known Preraka, Pran Kishore, since the early 70s in New York. Like, in fact, it was like 1973. We knew each other. And now I met him again after quite a few years in San Jose, when I moved back here to America. And so we became very, very close, and he would tell me about his experiences being with Srila Narayan Maharaj. He would tell me about his experiences in visiting Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And I had the opportunity to see Srila Sridhar Maharaj in 1985, Gaur Purnima. I spent 6 weeks there. I was in household life at that time. And that was my most concentrated period of association with him in his mat. So by 1986, when I moved back, then Ram Kishore was here in California. We met each other again. And he also informed me about that project that Srila Narayan Maharaj, he wanted to serve him by helping to build that temple. So it ended up that he is the one that enabled me to go to India to meet Srila Narayan Maharaj. Because we would talk about Narayan Maharaj. He had met him. I had seen him, but not personally met him, I had seen him twice. And so now it was arranged that I would be able to go there. He needed someone to deliver his donation to Srila Narayan Maharaj. So he requested me to do that. And that's how I got to go there in 1988. Then from that time on, like I'm saying, I was always feeling drawn toward Srila Narayan Maharaj. But as I'm trying to explain, I had already had two very exalted personalities. And the way that I accepted Srila Sridhar Maharaj was equal to Srila Prabhupada. So I already had the experience of having more than one guru. There are a lot of devotees. In fact, I know that Shamrani Didi, she told us that she couldn't quite understand how Prabhupada disciples could accept like Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj as their guru and have two gurus, you see. But then later on, when she came in contact with Srila Narayan Maharaj in the early 1990s, attending his classes, and her relationship was developing more and more, then at a certain point, she realized Guru Tattva, this Guru Tattva, because who had more association with Prabhupada than her? You know? She had so much, and did so much seva to Srila Prabhupada, right? Personal association, practically the first female disciple of Prabhupada. And so, in the same way, here I was, having two gurus. And at that time, none of us really knew Srila Narayan Maharaj's stature, his spiritual level. None of us really knew that at that point in time, because we hadn't had that much association with him. But through Pran Kishore, who was giving me droplets of his experiences with him, and at that point, Pran Kishore was already calling him Gurudev. He was already referring to Narayan Maharaj as Gurudev, and his wife Champak Lata. So now at this point, I was gradually, over those years, from 1988 until 1994, 6 years. I did go to India briefly in 1991 and met with Srila Narayan Maharaj only once, very briefly, at his center there. But now my relationship was gradually increasing after I had personally met him, and there was a change going on in my heart, right? And really I didn't know his true level. It was not possible for me to know that at that point. I had not had enough hearing from him. There was not so much literature available like that, because that's how you develop relationship with Guru, is by hearing, right? So, I told that story this morning on that Zoom broadcast. At that Zoom broadcast, I told the story of how I got the manuscript of Gurudev's book. But already there were so many seeds that were planted there, and because I had also read his Braj Mandala Parikrama book, and you know, there was so much incredible Katha in that Parikrama book, but I hadn't yet heard his direct lecture in English language. Because when I was there visiting with him, also, he was speaking in Hindi, and there was no translation. So now, I'm sitting in Los Angeles reading this manuscript of the book that's going to be published, which was the first English book called The Nectar of Govinda Leela. That's one of Gurudev's books. And I told how I became stunned, page after page after page. Because there's a particular experience that you have when you hear from a Sadguru, when you hear from a Braj Rasik Tattva Gya Vaishnava, and the flow and everything. And when I detected that, and my heart could read that, then I became quite amazed. Because, as I said, I just put the book down, and I remember saying, "Oh Krishna, you've come to me again as Siksha Guru." And from that moment, I accepted him as my Guru. Paid my obeisances to that book. And then I made it my one-pointed objective to go and be with him. So at the same time, Pran Kishore, Tirthapada, and others, they hadn't also been there with Gurudev for some years. But finally in 1994, we all converged. In 1994. And we went there, and as I told, we went on that Braj Mandala Parikrama, and I was actually there for 2 whole months with Srila Gurudev. And each day that went by during the parikrama, I was becoming more and more astonished, because we never heard that kind of katha really in the same way that Srila Gurudev, and actually being in Braj with a Braj Rasik Vaishnava, Rupanuga Braj Rasik Vaishnava, Uttam Adhikari, and he's going with us on foot and by bus to all the different holy places in Braj. It was very overwhelming. I had never gone on the Braj Mandala Parikrama before. I didn't really know so much about it. Yeah? And of course, Gurudev's book was already there with us. So, yes, and that's why in the middle of that parikrama during the month of Kartik, then I had that realization. How I saw Srila Narayan Raj ahead walking, and so many people walking behind him in this party. And then I thought to myself, there are many devotees who have never had the association of, especially our Srila Prabhupada. The whole Krishna consciousness movement is full, the whole world, of many devotees who never got to personally meet Srila Prabhupada, right? And then there's even the successive generations of devotees now. They never directly had the personal darshan of Srila Prabhupada. But even back then, in 1994, that was like less than 20 years since Prabhupada had departed, and so many devotees, they had that desire. So, but when I was walking this little bit of distance behind Srila Narayan Raj, Shri Guru Gauranga Gandharvika Giridhari, Shri Radha Govinda Jiyo Ki Jai. When I was walking, then this realization came to me that all those devotees who lament inside of their heart that, oh, I never met personally Srila Prabhupada, right? And I had this realization that if those devotees who feel that way were able to be here where I am, on this parikrama, with this Vaishnava personality, thank you, with this Vaishnava personality, if they were able to have this same opportunity, their heart would be completely satisfied. Because I could understand they are identical. They are both manifestations of the highest form of Guru Tattva, So, that's where I kind of left off. And it was the same year, that same Kartik, when ISKCON began to turn away from Srila Narayan Maharaj. After 6 years of hearing from him, all these recorded classes, we have them. We have possession of all those recordings. And you can hear how Gurudev is so benevolently giving them so much mercy and personally tutoring them. They requested that from him, and he also agreed. So, but during that Kartik is when they began to distance from Srila Narayan Maharaj. And by the next Gaur Purnima, then they passed their resolution that no one outside of none of the devotees in ISKCON should associate outside of ISKCON, even for such a personality, right? So, the next year, we again came for Brajmandala Parikrama. That was 1995. And our group was somewhat small, just like in 1994, Western devotees. And we had a wonderful parikrama, a wonderful Kartik with Gurudev. And we were talking amongst ourselves all the time. Oh, if only Srila Narayan Maharaj could come to the West. If only he could come. That'd be so wonderful, you know? And I didn't really know it, but there was a plan in the works with Brajanath Prabhu, Gopinath Prabhu, and there was a plan in the works to bring Gurudev to the West. So at that time, I was already coming out of household life, but I was doing some business of selling paintings in Malaysia and Taiwan to maintain. And I remember in February of 1996, February of 96. So I was in Taiwan, and I was on my way back to America. I got a phone call from Pran Kishore, who was calling, I'm not sure if he was calling from India or from Malaysia, because we had all moved over to Malaysia at that time. And then he said, I have some very, very heavy news for you. I said, really? What? He said, well, you know, there's a very great Vaishnava who just suddenly left the planet. I said, who's that? And he says, Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj. I said, really? He suddenly, and then he described to me how he was in Mayapur, and without any warning or anything, he was speaking Hari Katha, and he leaned back and very quickly left. Even the Gaur Govinda Maharaj disciples, the reason why this was so important for us is that we were in Malaysia for about a year, and we were interacting with all the Gaur Govinda Maharaj disciples there. And they really appreciated Gurudev also. So we were always sharing with them, and they were sharing with us. And I had made it a point that when I would go back to India, I would want to personally meet Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj, because I'd only seen him like really one time, and heard him in LA when he came one time. And so I had developed, by hearing about him, I had developed so much faith. And they also shared lectures of his, audio recordings and so forth. And so we were sharing with them, and they were sharing with us. And I began to realize that this is amazing, that Gaur Govinda Maharaj is speaking all of these same kind of topics in ISKCON. You see? But they were also banning him at that time. Yeah, that's the problem. They were also banning him. And although he was an acharya, a guru in ISKCON, Prabhupada's disciple. So that was going on. Anyway, Pran Kishore told me that, and I was very deeply struck in my heart. Then he said, I have some more news for you. He said, are you sitting down? And I said, yes. Then he said, well, Srila Gurudev is coming to the West. I said, really? He's coming to the West? Yes, he's coming to the West in just a couple of months. Right? That was end of February. I said, really? Where is he going to? He's first going to Holland, then to England, then he's coming to America. Really? Then I said, I'm going with him. You know, I resolved at that very moment. And then, so after that, I came back to America, and I was in America for a couple of months. And then I got a phone call from Vishnu Prabhu, who lives in Houston. He's from Delhi originally, Gurudev's disciple. And my name was Urukram at that time. So then he said, Urukram Prabhu, I'm calling because you know that Gurudev is coming to America. I said, well, yeah, I've heard. I said, is anything organized? He said, well, that's why I'm calling you, because he's going to be coming within about a month, and we need to organize a tour for him. And we need to also organize persons that will be hosting him. And you know, at that time, there were not many Western devotees that were close with Gurudev. There was a small handful of us, right? So anyway, I got to work on, I said, okay, we were thinking, he said, we were thinking that you could organize a West Coast tour, because he's first going to come to Houston and then he's going to fly to Los Angeles. And so if you can organize a tour. So then I began to communicate with Kalimba's mother, Kasturi. She's living in Oakland, still has the same place. And so we began to think, where can Gurudev... It's a whole long story. But eventually we found these people in Fullerton who were at a kind of Indian/ISKCON temple there. And they agreed to host him. And we also lined up that Gurudev would come up here to Badger. Kalimba Didi was living up here at the time, and this was getting arranged here in Badger. And then we also got in touch with Radhakanta, who would become Radhakanta Prabhu, and he was really a follower of Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj, and Gaura Govinda Maharaj had just left the planet. So I went up to the Bay Area, and I met him along with Kasturi, who knew him for many, many years, and talked with him and his wife. And he said, okay, I'll host Narayan Maharaj. And he had a very nice house. I think that was in Walnut Creek or somewhere around there in the Bay Area. And then we lined up also that Gurudev would come to Eugene, Oregon. Tripurari Swami was there at the time, had started a temple. He wasn't there though when he was. He was there when Gurudev came. And also Nrsimha Maharaj and that other Vishnu Maharaj. And then we also organized, but that was not part of my organization, that Gurudev would go up to Canada. Yes. And he would, what?
Seattle also.
Well, that's along the way.
Yeah.
But his objective was to go to Canada, right? And visit with Jagadish, who at that time was kind of in the process of leaving his sannyas and so forth. But Gurudev had long relationship with him because he was always in charge of the Gurukula in ISKCON, in Vrindavan. So then it happened because Kishori Mohan Prabhu, his wife, Sudevi, had already taken initiation from Gurudev in Southern California when Gurudev came, without discussing it with him. But anyway, they worked it out together somehow that Srila Gurudev would be passing through Seattle, Washington, where they were, Mithiladesh, his father, and they had like t-shirt tables, they were making money. And then Gurudev actually came there. And so that's where Kishori Mohan met Gurudev the first time. He didn't take initiation right away, but Sudevi, she was love at first sight. She can tell, if you hear her telling the story, it's pretty sweet, you know. So, but he was charmed, and Mithiladesh Prabhu also.
Gurangi was the one person who was initiated in Seattle.
Oh, your daughter, Gurangi. Ah, okay, yeah. So he was only there for a couple of days, I think, and but they took him. Mithiladesh told the story that they brought Srila Gurudev to the place where the ISKCON temple was in the year when Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj departed, which I think was 68 or 69. 68, right? And Mithiladesh informed Gurudev that, you know, here in this city, Seattle, is where Srila Prabhupada had a temple. And here's where he received the news that your Guru Maharaj has departed from this world. Would you like to see that building. It's no longer a temple, but we can bring you there. Yes, yes. Gurudev wanted to see that building. And, you know, as they were driving there, Mittaladish was telling Gurudev how Srila Prabhupada wept in his lecture in separation mood and what he told from there. Though that lecture was recorded, it's in the ISKCON archives. Sorry. So then when they came out of the car and they were almost in front of the temple, then Mittalji said, this is the very place where our Prabhupada received the news of the departure of his near and dear godbrother, your Guru Maharaj. And tears came to Gurudev's eyes, and Gurudev bowed down on the sidewalk there. And then when Gurudev stood up, he said, I want to travel everywhere where Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj stayed, because these are all holy tirthas. He said something else, I'm forgetting exactly what remark, but it was something like, you know, I want to help all of Srila Swami Maharaj's disciples. I want to help them, and I want to give them this great treasure of our Rupanuga Sampradaya. So then, after that, he went up to Canada. So in the meantime, those of us who had gone with Gurudev all the way up to Eugene, Oregon, the next preaching was going to be, after we'd come back from Canada, would be in New York. You know. And so Shamrani was with us, because she's from there, and she had this whole long list of devotees who she was calling on the phone to find a person who could host Srila Narayan Maharaj, right? And we were staying near to the Brooklyn Temple at that time in some kind of very eccentric Indian doctor's house. He had like dozens of cats and this and that. We could have used that as a place, but I mean, it was not suitable, right? So anyway, we were there at least about 3 days, maybe even 4 or 5 days, I don't remember, but each day, Shamrani was calling all these different devotees, because she knew even older devotees from the late 60s who joined in New York and this and that. And she wasn't succeeding. So literally, maybe 1 or 2 days before Gurudev's already scheduled to arrive at the New Jersey airport from the West Coast, he's flying in. Shamrani Didi announced to us, I found a person. Now that person's name is Jairam Das, who joined the New York Temple around 68, something like that, 69. He was one of those earlier devotees. And he was a musician, so he used to go into Manhattan and do his music during the week, and then on the weekend he would come. And he owned a house, which was 1 mile away from the Towako, New Jersey ISKCON Temple. 1 mile away. It was a very nice residential neighborhood with a lot of houses that had, you know, a little land around. Making funny sounds. So then that devotee, he said, yes, I'd be very happy. I'd be very happy to host Narayan Maharaj. Then he mentioned that he had already hosted Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Maharaj from Chaitanya Saraswat Mat one time. And he said, you know, I have this house, and it's a very excellent facility, and you can take it over completely. All the devotees can stay there. You know, I won't be there for these few days, but then on the weekend, I'll be back. And not only that, but I have a brand new Chevrolet Suburban, you know, what do they call those?
Station wagon.
SUV. Not a station wagon, SUV. Very big vehicle, brand new. He said, you can use that for Narayan Maharaj. So Krishna arranged everything in a single moment like that, you see? And so that's where Gurudev stayed. And we went to pick him up at the airport, and you know who was there waiting at the airport? Vaikuntanath and his wife. Old Prabhupada disciple. Somehow he got news about Gurudev coming. Also Uddhava Prabhu from the west coast, our Uddhava Prabhu. Just a few devotees. And then we received Gurudev and then brought him back to that house. So that was an amazing, amazing week. Because during that week, we went into Manhattan and stayed overnight at a hotel that Ramesh Prabhu, he was also there. He rented a whole bunch of rooms in this hotel in Manhattan for all the devotees. We were all squeezed into sleeping on the floor and here and there. And we went to Tompkins Square Park the next morning with Srila Gurudev. And then after that, we went to 26 2nd Avenue with Srila Gurudev. And he gave the most astonishing, amazing lecture, which actually there's a video of this on YouTube. You can see his lecture that he gave there. That's the only time I've ever been there. This is making some kind of noises.
It's the kitchen. There's a speaker in the kitchen.
No, this is different. It's noises on the phone. So, it's okay?
You put it on the window shelf.
No. You can keep it here. I don't know if it had gone off or what. So then, that week went by. Many wonderful things happened during that week. And then, yes.
Did he meet Pradyumna and...
Yes, Pradyumna came to see him at that house. And who?
And Satyaraj.
I don't remember if Satyaraj came. I think he did. Satyaraj definitely met Gurudev. He might have been there at the 26 2nd Avenue program as well, not sure. Yeah. Also, you know who came was Madhava Das from the Bhaktivedanta Institute, who had taken sannyas from Srila Sridhar Maharaj and had the title Bhakti something Madhava Maharaj. And he was still sannyasi. I think he's still living now also. But he came to see Gurudev, you know. And actually when Pradyumna came, we were talking with him on the porch, waiting to see Gurudev, and we were suggesting to him that, you know, that how Prabhupada had assigned him to continue the Srimad Bhagavatam after his departure, and that was his seva. And Srila Prabhupada also told him that he should do it under the consultation of Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. So there's the whole story of how that didn't happen, right? And then we told him, oh, you know that Srila Narayan Maharaj, he's also wants to complete the Srimad Bhagavatam, and maybe you can work with him. We suggested that to him. Of course, he didn't take it up, but you know, Pradyumna was very respectful to Gurudev. Yeah. And so at the end of that week was the final day, and we brought Gurudev to the airport, and he was going to depart to go back to India, right? Via a stop along the way in Europe, rest stop. And I remember how, you know, standing there with Gurudev as he was going through, you know, the check-in area and everything, and Madhav Maharaj was there, and you know, when just like standing in front of Gurudev, and this is the end of his first world tour. None of us knew whether or not he would continue and have another tour. There was nothing set or planned, right? None of us could ever have imagined that he's going to go on for the next 15 years and travel the entire world and do 32, you know, world tours and initiate thousands of devotees and build huge temples in the 3 dhams, you know, and publish all of these innumerable books. None of us knew that at that point, you know. So when he was leaving and turning, and it was kind of like, you know, the description of the pastime of Mahaprabhu when he was in Puri and he was going to leave for South India. You know that pastime? Where Mahaprabhu had been only for a couple of months, few months, and now the devotees followed him from Jagannath Puri all the way to Alalnath, which is something like 20 kilometers, you know. But then at that point, then Mahaprabhu told them, you cannot come any farther now. Now I'm going. Then he turned and began walking as he chanted, what? Krishna, 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 hey. That song. And as he walked, all the devotees fainted on the ground in extreme separation, right? So I'm just remembering that because there was some similarity. As Gurudev turned to walk away, and there, this is the end of his tour. Life-changing tour, where he snatched up at least a couple of hundred devotees, took their hearts, as he would say, put them in his pocket, and left. So at that moment I knew, and the way that Gurudev looked at me at that time, I could tell. He doesn't like that I'm staying back. He wants me to be with him. So that happened pretty quickly by Gurudev's. That's a whole nother story. How he told me he wants to give me sannyas on his next tour on the very first day of his next tour to the eastern countries, which happened after Kartik that year, 1996. And that 96 Kartik was also at least 150 Western devotees came that year to that Kartik. You came that year?
97.
97, yeah. So, you know, all these pastimes and stories of traveling with the Gurudev all throughout the world and being so fortunate to have his personal association and to be trained by him. Actually, Gurudev was training everyone. The subject matters that Gurudev was giving in the West, year after year after year after year, he was training everyone to understand thoroughly what is this Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. Perfect presentation, especially focusing on Srimad Bhagavatam, of course. That was the main subject in most of his festivals. But sometimes he would also speak on Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially, of course, it's all connecting with Srimad Bhagavatam. I was just looking at Pinnacle of Devotion, and I want to read some of that in these next couple of days, because those are some of his initial introductory lectures, and it's amazing. What Gurudev came to give and how he presented that. That book is such a gem, from Australia and also in Houston, Texas. You know, he was introducing the Chaitanya Charitamrita. First chapter, second chapter, third chapter, and then finally fourth chapter. And he was basing this presentation. It's very amazing how Gurudev was weaving into this, the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita chapters. He was weaving all the Braj pastimes into that presentation and giving devotees a whole basis upon which they're going to be able to start to enter. He really focused on the verse, Anarpita Chirim Shirat, that one, Karunaya Dhatirana Kalo. He focused on that verse very much, And then he explained Krishna's 3 desires, and he explained the difference between Dwarka. He told so many Dwarka Leelas with the queens of Dwarka, Krishna, and his joking with Rukmini, and this and that. And he was elaborately showing what is Braj Ras. So I think that's a wonderful topic on this 100th anniversary of Srila Gurudev's appearance, to hear some of that nectar and to bathe in that and to just revel in how sweet Gurudev's presentations were, and actually capturing. He would capture, literally. This is the room where Gurudev gave his first lecture. this very room that we're sitting in, sitting right there where the deities are, there was a sofa there. This was just a living room in the house of Nirguna Nilachala. It wasn't even quite as big. You know, they renovated this and changed the layout. But Gurudev, right here, this is where he gave his first lectures. And you were how old then?
13, 12.
12, 13, right? Yeah? And so many of the others, all your brothers and sisters, and the kids of Nanda Gopal, and KK, and everyone. And the magic that Gurudev did here, and how he, you know, coming with, there were certain persons who were a little bit suspicious because the GBC had banned and this, so they're like checking out. They had a little bit of doubts. I remember Madhusudan from New York Temple, old Prabhupada disciple. He used to live here with his wife Kanchan Bala, and he was here during those lectures. And I remember after like the second day, we were sitting in that room where I stay in right now. We went into that room and we had a little discussion. And he was saying, Madhusudan was saying, I don't understand it. What they're saying about this person, Narayan Maharaj. He was hearing all the propaganda, negative propaganda from the GVC. And he said, he's absolutely wonderful. You know? So in this way, the whole history will be written down. It's already a little bit written, but needs to be written, the whole history of Gurudev, how he traveled throughout the world, each and every country. We'll have to have devotees, what do you call, recollect everything. There are many, many memory tapes, but it needs to be retraced. There needs to be a chronological, like they have that for Srila Prabhupada, you know, every single place that he went during those 12 years traveling in the West, when he went there, the dates, everything, right? So we need to have that for Srila Gurudev. And so right now there's a 55-hour Hari Katha, remembrances and offerings from the hearts of devotees. And it looks like on that list at least maybe 150 different devotees are going to be speaking over these next 55 hours. So here in New Braj, we're going on with this festival, beginning this festival. So many nice, wonderful devotees have come to take part, and various kirtaniyas and sincere souls. So we're very happy. Tomorrow is the actual appearance day of Srila Gurudev. So it'll be grand celebration tomorrow. Non-stop offerings and pushpanjali from all the devotees. And so much wonderful memories of Srila Gurudev. I think they'll also try to arrange, we were discussing to have this larger screen, and then to be able to, watch some videos of Gurudev, a little bit of Gurudev on YouTube. There's so many videos there. So I think we can do that tomorrow. Anything to add, Jai Govinda Prabhu, about the program or the...
No, Maharaj, it was tomorrow at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
10 a.m.,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Should we finish now?
Yeah.
Or go on another 10, 15 minutes? Or it's up to you.
The devotees, they travel so long, so it's whatever they want.
Okay, I'm just going to read a little bit of this. That'll be some direct katha from Gurudev.
Okay. Yeah, we can do 15 more minutes. Maharaj.
Okay, okay. Okay, so the beginning of this book, Gurudev is introducing this shloka. Anarpitichirim chirat karunaya avatirna kalo samarpaitum unato jvalarasam swabhakti shriyam hari purata sundara dyuti kadamba sandipita Sada hridaya kandare spuratuva sachinandanaha. At the end of Dwapara Yuga, after Sri Krishna's pastimes in this world were completed, he returned to his Goloka Vrindavan in the spiritual world. And there he began to think of the pure devotion he wanted to distribute to this world, even to the trees and creepers. Only he would be able to give this. The religious principles for each age, the Yuga Dharma, they can be given by Mahavishnu. Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. This is a very significant point that Gurudev is making, and there was a big controversy in 1994 about this. So here, Gurudev is saying how Krishna went back to the spiritual world, but then he began to think of that highest pure devotion that he wanted to distribute to this world. And only he would be able to give this. So the Yuga Dharma, the religious principles for each age, they can be given by Mahavishnu, who appeared in Kali Yuga as Sri Advaita Acharya. They can be given by him. And this is his function, right? Why is it Mahavishnu's function to give the Yuga Dharma?
He's the maintainer.
Yes, he's the maintainer of the whole material creation. He's the origin of the Vishnu forms. And his duty is to make sure that Dharma is going on, so that the jivas who are captured by the Maya potency in the material world, that they can gain release from that and attain the spiritual world. So, here, he's telling that in each yuga, Mahavishnu, this is his function. He can give this Yuga Dharma, the process for this age, right? But Krishna Prem, that can only be given by Sri Krishna himself. No Vishnu form can give Krishna Prem. They cannot do that. It's not possible. Only Krishna himself can give Krishna Prem. So, that very Sri Krishna who can give love and devotion to all entities, he took the mood and the complexion of Srimati Radhika, and he became Sri Gaur Chandra. Why did he do this? That's the question. Why did he do this? This is the whole basis of Gurudev's presentation, his first preaching in the West, to explain, according to Chaitanya Charitamrita, why Krishna descended as Gaurachandra. The first 4 chapters of the Adi Leela, Chaitanya Charitamrita, are all describing this. So, why did he do this? It is because his mercy is unparalleled and causeless. As the ocean of rasa, he wanted to taste the fulfillment of the 3 desires that he could not fulfill in his form as Krishna. And also to bestow that Krishna Prem which had not been distributed to the jivas since the previous day of Lord Brahma. So now he's reciting this verse, Anarpiti Charim Chirat, that I just told. Here's the translation. May that Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Sachi Devi, be transcendentally situated in the innermost chambers of your heart, resplendent with the radiance of molten gold. He has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no incarnation ever offered before, the most sublime and radiant mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. The meaning of this verse is profound, for the complete causeless mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is within it. This verse, written by Rupa Goswami, the entire causeless mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is within this verse. And the meaning is very, very profound. It is necessary to understand the essence of this verse and thus become very beautiful, qualified devotees. That's what Gurudev came to do. To make everyone very beautiful and qualified devotees. Without properly understanding its moods, then chanting Hare Krishna will not be sufficient to receive the Lord's full mercy. That is a very revolutionary statement. Did you catch that? What did he say?
Without understanding these moods, then chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra
will not be sufficient to what? To receive the Lord's full mercy. That's a very important sentence. That's the basis of Gurudev's preaching mission. Why did he preach these things? Because at a certain stage, it is necessary for the devotees to very deeply understand the moods that are being conveyed in this verse. He said, the quality of our chanting will be enhanced by our thoroughly grasping and embracing its meaning. With a clear understanding of this verse and its mood, we can focus internally while chanting. Mayavadis, they also chant Hare Krishna, but they go to hell because of their great offenses to the holy name. Karmis also chant, but because of their desire to increase money, name and fame, they are also cheated of the true fruit of chanting. The holy name fulfills their material desires, but bhakti avoids them. On the other hand, those who chant under the guidance of a highly qualified guru or Vaishnava, they develop a superlative quality of chanting. Therefore, it is most important to understand the essence of the instructions hidden in this verse. So, now Srila Gurudev is telling the purpose of Lord Chaitanya's descent. We are continuing our reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, we are discussing the third chapter, which explains the identity of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the reasons he came to this world. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj tells us that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sachinandana Gaur Hari, is directly Sri Krishna himself. He is not only Bhagavan, the Supreme Lord, but he is Swayam Bhagavan. Remember that class we had, Risheshwari? The Bhagavan class? Okay? So here Gurudev is saying, he's not only Bhagavan, he's Swayam Bhagavan. meaning he is the original form of Godhead from whom all other incarnations emanate. He is Brajendra Nandan Krishna himself. This Krishna is eternally situated with all his attributes and with his complete power personified in the form of Srimati Radhika. I'm reading that again. He is Brajendra Nandan Krishna himself. And this Krishna, the Brajendra Nandan Krishna himself, is eternally situated with all his attributes and with his complete power personified in the form of Srimati Radhika. Even if the sun could be separated from its heat and light, Sri Radha Krishna can never be separated. Krishna sported in Vrindavan for 10 years. He took birth in Mahavan Gokul, and he played there for his first few years, and then both his family and Radhika's family moved to Vrindavan, where they enjoyed unlimited pastimes. There in Vrindavan, Nanda Baba's family stayed at Chatikara, and Vrishabhanu Maharaj stayed at Ral. Then they moved to Kamyavan, then to Kailanvan, and finally Nanda Baba's family settled in Nandagaon, Gokul. And Vrishabhanu Maharaj's family settled in Varshana. In each dwelling place, their families made a new village, and their villages were always side by side. Sri Radha and Krishna met at these places and eternally performed their topmost pastime of Ras Leela, as well as other pastimes. When Krishna comes to this world from Goloka Vrindavan, the whole of Braj comes with him. His associates, the Yamuna River, Govardhan Hill, Bandirvan Forest, the entire 84 krosas, 168 square miles of Vrindavan, they accompany him, they descend. He comes once only in a day of Brahma in order to taste the 5 rasas of his pastimes. Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. And although he enjoys these rasas, he still has 3 unfulfilled desires. And the fulfillment of these desires is the essential reason for his appearance as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Also, because he is an ocean of causeless mercy and an ocean of rasa, he wants to sprinkle drops of special mercy upon the jivas so that they will be able to come to him and serve him forever. So now, a devotee reads from the introduction of Srila Prabhupada's to the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela chapter 4, right? He's reading this. In this chapter, it's Prabhupada writing, in this chapter of the epic Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has stressed that Lord Chaitanya appeared for 3 principal purposes of his own. It's very important for those of you who are not so well versed in this topic that there are internal and external reasons for Krishna's appearance, primary and secondary. And it's very essential, if you want to understand who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is, you have to read these chapters, these initial chapters, and especially chapter 4, Adi Leela, to understand fully this topic. So, Prabhupada is introducing this chapter 4. So, he's saying that the first purpose of Lord Chaitanya appearing was to relish the position of Srimati Radharani, who is the prime reciprocator of transcendental love of Sri Krishna. Lord Krishna is the reservoir of transcendental loving transactions with Srimati Radharani. And the subject of those loving transactions is the Lord himself, and Radharani is the object, the abode of love. Thus, the subject, the Lord, wanted to relish the loving mellow in the position of the object, Radharani. Now, the second reason for his appearance was to understand the transcendental mellow of himself. Lord Krishna is all sweetness. Radharani's attraction for Krishna is sublime. And to experience that attraction and understand the transcendental sweetness of himself, he accepted the mentality of Radharani. Interesting choice of words of Srila Prabhupada. The third reason that Lord Chaitanya appeared was to enjoy the bliss tasted by Radharani. The Lord, Shri Krishna, thought that undoubtedly Radharani enjoyed his company and he enjoyed the company of Radharani, but the exchange of transcendental mellow between the spiritual couple was more pleasing to Srimati Radharani than to Shri Krishna. And Radharani felt more transcendental pleasure in the company of Krishna than he could understand without taking her position. But for Shri Krishna, to enjoy in the position of Srimati Radharani was impossible, because that position was completely foreign to him. And Krishna is the transcendental male, Srimati Radhika is the transcendental female. Therefore, to know the transcendental pleasure of loving Krishna, Lord Krishna himself appeared as Lord Chaitanya, accepting the emotions and the bodily luster of Srimati Radharani. Lord Chaitanya appeared to fulfill these confidential desires and also to preach the special significance of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. For that reason, and to answer the call of Advaita Prabhu. These were secondary reasons. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami was the principal figure among Lord Chaitanya's confidential devotees, and the records of his diary have revealed all these confidential purposes of the Lord. These revelations have been confirmed by the statements of Srila Rupa Goswami in his various prayers and poems. So this chapter also specifically describes the difference between lust and love. The transactions of Sri Krishna and Srimati Radhika are completely different from material lust. Therefore, the author has very clearly distinguished between them. So, to end this class, Gurudev is telling, while Sri Krishna was considering how to fulfill his desires, the time came in Kali Yuga to preach the Yuga Dharma, the religious process of the age. And at that time, Advaita Acharya came to prepare a platform for the descent of Krishna and his associates. Advaita Acharya wanted to give Braj Prem, but he could not do so because this was not the function of Mahavishnu. In fact, this was not possible even for Ram, Nrsimha, Kalki, Vamana, Parasuram, all of these avatars. They could establish Yuga Dharma, but they could not give to any living being what Swayam Bhagavan, Brajendra Nandan, Sri Krishna could give, pure Braj Prem. Baladev Prabhu can give this Prem, but he leaves it for Krishna to distribute, and he assists. In the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Baladev came as Nityananda Prabhu, and Nityananda Prabhu can also distribute that special Krishna Prem, that Madhurya Prem, directly and indirectly, but he waits for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So now it's time to have our arti, and we'll continue at some point in the next few days to complete this section It's quite long, actually. With so much nectar. But tomorrow, the big day, everyone should be prepared to express your Pushpanjali. They had a little thing on internet of all the senior devotees saying the same phrase. Offer your best flower. Then you see Umadidi, offer your best flower. And then you see another devotee, offer your best flower to Gurudev. So that's what we're going to do tomorrow. Everyone is going to offer their best flower, their Pushpanjali offerings to our beloved Gurudev. And we're going to drown in the nectar of Harikatha and Kirtan, Mahaprasad and Sadhu Sangha. Gaur Prema. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Gurudev's Transcendental Centennial 100th Appearance Day Festival ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi.